So welcome to another video in our amazing series on Python tricks. And in this video, we are going to cover kwargs and args. I should say args and kwargs. So basically, you might have seen functions in Python that accept like star args or star kwargs. So we are going to be talking about that in this video. By the way, args and kwargs are just the naming convention. You can use any name, whatever you like. But I'm going to stick to args and kwargs for the rest of this video and for the rest of my life. So let's start with some basics. I'll create a function and we'll slowly build on top of it. So let's say I create a function, its name is f, and this function doesn't do anything much. So like a blank body. Now, if I call this function, what happens? Nothing happens. It works fine because it isn't doing anything. But what if I make this function accept two arguments? So obviously this is going to throw error because I'm not passing here anything. But let's see what interpreter says, the exact error. So it says there are two required positional arguments. So what Python does is if there is a function that is accepting arguments, Python would ask you to send corresponding positional arguments while invoking that function, which means here is the point where we are invoking this function. So we are required to send positional arguments. What are positional arguments? Let's see them. So let's say I just pass 10, 12. Now I'm passing positional arguments to this function, and 10 is corresponding to A and 12 is corresponding to B. So it's based on the position, how I position them while invoking the function. So before moving forward, let's add a print statement here so that we can know what's going on. So I've added a print statement and printing both the arguments. Now let's see what it prints. So it prints 10, 12. As I said, A is corresponding to 10, B is corresponding to 12 based on their positions. If I interchange them, I hope now you would understand what is going to be the output. This is what is expected. One important thing that Python allows you to do here is that while invoking that particular function, you can specify the name of the argument that the function is accepting. So for example, you can do like this, something like this. A equals 12, and you can do B equals 10. You can do this. This is valid. But in this case, the positional arguments have now been converted to keyword arguments. So keyword arguments are the arguments. While invoking, you have to specify their name. So if I say A equals to 12, B equals to 10, now in this case, let's see what it prints. So it prints 12, 10, which means A is now 10 in this function, and B will now be treated as 10. One more thing which is important to note here is that in case of keyword arguments, the position doesn't matter. The ordering, the how you order your arguments while invoking that function doesn't matter. So which means here you can simply say B equals to 12 and A equals to 10, and this would work just fine. So you see that now A is 10. Here we are printing A and then B. So A is receiving value 10. B is receiving a value of 12. So now that you have a basic essence of what are positional and keyword arguments, let's try to build something further on top of this. So I have a function that doesn't accept more than two arguments. Now, which means if I try to pass anything apart from that, so let's say I pass C equals 14. So this wouldn't work because function isn't expecting a third argument. So if I try to run this, it got me an error, right? So it says that unexpected keyword argument. So I obviously, because I'm passing keyword argument, whether or not it's keyword or positional, function isn't expecting any third argument. Now let's say we want our function to accept any number of arguments, which means variable. So while invoking, you can pass any number of arguments, and that our function will be able to consume. So that's where our special syntax of star args and star kwargs comes into the play. But we will start by understanding what is star args, and then we'll understand about star kwargs. So let's remove this and replace this with something star args. So of course, this is not A and B are not part of the argument list, so I'm removing that as well. Now here Now let's try to pass some positional arguments and see what happens. So if I pass 10 here, right now I'm not passing anything. So if I run it, let me clear this out. Now if I run it, you see there is no error. So which means with this star args, even without passing any argument, any positional argument, I'm able to compile this successfully. Now let's say I want to pass 10 or 13, whatever. So this still works. So which means if I'm passing even one argument, this thing is compiled successfully. This works fine. Now if I add some more arguments, so this still works, which means this star args is able to consume all of our arguments. Whatever we are passing here should be getting stored in the args somewhere. But let's see what is args inside the function body. So let's say we want to print the type of args. You see, whenever we call it, this function, when gets executed, it prints the type of args and it comes as tuple, right? Which means this args is a tuple. Let's print that tuple. So if I print that, you see that it printed everything that I passed here as a tuple in this function here at this point. So one more thing, as I've said that this args is just a naming convention. You can use any name here. It's up to you, but we will just be following the naming convention. Now let's try to pass any keyword arguments. So let's say I pass a equals 10. So let's try to execute this and see what happens. You see it is saying an error that unexpected keyword argument A, which means args is not capable of consuming keyword arguments, right? Which means we have to accept, if we want to accept keyword arguments, then we need to do something else. And that's where star kwargs come in. So let's try to do that. And now the error should be gone. Now if we run this, you see there is no error. We just printed this particular tuple. Now args is going to consume all the positional arguments, and kwargs is going to consume the keyword arguments, which was not earlier consumed by positional arguments. Now keyword arguments will be consumed by star kwargs, and positional arguments will be consumed by star args. And star args, as we just saw, args is basically treated as a tuple, and we just printed it, and that's what we are seeing here. Now let's try to print the kwargs. So let's print the type of kwargs. You see, after we printed the tuple, which was the type of the args, we printed args, which was all the positional arguments printed as a tuple here, and then we printed the type of kwargs, which is the class dict, which means this kwargs inside this function body is a dictionary, which means it's a key value pair. And that's what we wanted, right? We know that in keyword arguments, there is a key, which is name of that particular argument, equals some value, which is the value of that particular argument. And that is, which means dictionary would be the best data structure to represent such thing. So let's try to print the kwargs and see what it prints. So it prints exactly what we suspected, exactly what we expected, not suspected. So A10, that's what we are passing here. So let's pass some more keyword arguments. So let's say I pass B equals 15. Now let's print that. And yes, A10, B15, like any regular dictionary. So what did we understand? So args is just like any other tuple. Args is going to consume all the positional arguments and is a tuple in the function body. And you can do anything, anything that you want to do, any operation that you want to operate on args as a tuple, because it's a tuple. Now, kwargs is a dictionary that consumes all the keyword arguments, and name of those keyword arguments are going to be keys in this particular dictionary, kwargs, inside the function body. That's what we see here, right? There are two keyword arguments, A equals to 10, B equals to 15, and A is present as key, and B is also present as key in kwargs with their corresponding values, 10 and 15. 10 and 15 here. and you can perform any operation that you want to inside this function body. Now, two important things I would like to tell you here. One is that this particular syntax, which is you're seeing a star here and then star star here, this is a special syntax. Don't confuse it like with a multiplication operation or like a pointer in any other language like C or C++. They have star as a pointer, so don't confuse it like that. Star and star star here only denotes that this is the keyword argument. The name of that keyword arguments is kwargs, and similarly here is positional argument, and name of that positional argument is args. That's all it denotes here. Second thing that I would like to tell you here is that all the positional arguments, while invoking a function from left to right, all the positional arguments should appear first, and then there should be keyword arguments, which means all positional arguments should appear before all the keyword arguments. You cannot pass a positional argument after keyword arguments. For example, I pass 100 here, so this is going to throw me an error. You may think that, okay, it's flexible enough, and 100 is going to be consumed at args, so that's not going to happen. Python is going to throw an error. So let's see what this particular editor is showing. Positional argument cannot appear after keyword arguments. Let's see what Python interpreter has to say. So it also says positional argument follows keyword arguments, and that's an error. Positional arguments following any keyword argument should not happen. This should not happen. You should always keep all the positional arguments before keyword arguments. One important thing to note here is that you can also pass these star args and star star kwargs to other functions as well. And for that, to show that, I've created this function g. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to pass the args and kwargs that were received in function f to the function g. But how am I going to do that? So let's see that. So I have this function, I'm calling this function g, and it's going to be fairly simple. Like the way we have accepted in the definition, the same way we are going to pass it to other function. And that's the syntax. So I'm going to pass args like this and kwargs like this. So there is no difference while invoking them and while accepting them. So if I run this, you see that f, there are two print statements coming from function f, and they print this as the args and this as kwargs. And identical value is being printed in function g as well. The args of function f and function g are identical, and kwargs of function g and function f are also identical, and that's how we do it. Now, what happens if we remove the star here? Guess and then think what should happen here. You can pause a little. Well, now let me tell you. So if you call it like this, as I've said previously as well, now we are not passing any keyword arguments. We are not using this special syntax also. So what happens? The args and kwargs are now treated as a regular positional argument. And we know that positional arguments are always consumed by args. So now, does that hint work? So are you able to think now what could have happened? Now, what can happen in this case? So if you run this, you would see that these two positional arguments are now consumed at args, and kwargs is now empty. And that's what we see here in G. But args is now having the tuple that was args in the function f here, and the dictionary that was kwargs in the function f here. So I hope that made sense. So before we go, I would like to tell you one more example. So let's say we have this case where I have all the positional arguments like from 13 till 45 and then two keyword arguments. Now, and I'm passing them here. So what do we expect the output here? So let's try to print this and see. So it prints args, all the positional arguments as a tuple, like 13, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 45. That's what we are passing here. And then all the keyword arguments in a dictionary, A10, B15. That's what we are passing here as well. But before args, you can also give some extra arguments, like positional arguments as well. So for example, if I just give X here. So in this case, let's try to print and see what happens. Now you see that in case of args, everything remains same in case of kwargs. kwargs remains unaffected from the previous example when compared to the previous example. But in case of args, you see that 13 is now chopped off. It's not present in that particular tuple. Now that's where the thing is. So 13 is now now x now assumes 13. 13 is now assigned to x. Let's print x. I'll run it again. And yes, so you see that x is 13 and args is everything after 13. So 1 till 45 is consumed by args. A equals 10, B equals to 15 is consumed by kwargs, which is normal. That we have been seeing so far. But x, because we have explicitly mentioned one positional argument, so that will be that will consume 13 here. If we put one more parameter here, argument here, so which means in this case 13 and 1 are going to be assigned to x and y respectively, and rest all of the positional arguments will be consumed by args and followed by all the keyword arguments. So with that, I hope that you understood what are args and kwargs and how it can help you to create a function definition that can accept a variable number of arguments, whether positional or keyword arguments. So I'm hoping to see you in the next video. Hope you like the video. If you like the video, please hit a like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I'm going to see you in the next one.